just a couple of minutes, so why don't you ride with me up to my floor, and you can tell me a little bit about yourself.
Oh,
okay?
that'd be great.
Come on.
Yes, thank you. Can I, let me tell you now.
Well, go ahead.
I grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota. Yes, and he taught me so much about work ethic and everything. And then my mom, she worked really hard too, and she taught us kids all sorts of things. Like, she used to go to a Bible college. It was called, well, I don't remember, but it was a really great school, and I wanted to learn all about how to do things. I was studying to be a teacher, and I decided to go to Israel instead, so I spent all my money on that trip, and it was fantastic. I don't regret it. In 1980, I got married, and it was just wonderful. My husband was so great, and can you believe we've been married 30 years? We have 2 great children. And I decided that I was gonna go back to work, because I had been teaching my kids for not 20 years, they were home. I was home 20 years, and then I was saying, I listen well, I have really good listening skills, and team building, people just love to work with me.
Welcome to Career Solutions with David Rawles, your guide to improving the quality of your career. David will share tips for career success, faith-based tips for locating, landing jobs, and succeeding at your work. Join your host, David Rawles, who brings more than 30 years' experience working for GTE and Disney as he helps you with your career solutions.
Well, welcome to another session of Career Solutions. I'm excited to be here because we're going to be doing some things a little bit differently in this session than we have in some of our past sessions. I hope you enjoyed that little skit. That was done by Laura Poole and Gary Beggs, 2 very close friends, 2 wonderful supporters of our ministry. They actually shot that skit at Gary's office. Gary has a staffing firm here locally. And we sort of told them what we wanted, and that was all ad-lib. They did it all in one take. It was just absolutely wonderful. They went up the fake 132 floors as that door kept opening, and I thought this is the perfect example of the worst 2-minute elevator speech I've ever seen, and it certainly makes the point for what we want to talk about tonight, and that is making a good impression when we have an opportunity to share our background with somebody who might be a help for us, might be an assistance to us. And we're going to be sharing a few more of those 2-minute drills or those elevator speeches before the night's over. Will Rogers once said, the more you say, the less people remember. In effect, making a case for brevity. In effect, telling us that we need to be crisp and concise in what we say if we want to make an impact and people are going to remember what we have to say on this subject, that subject, or in this case, our job background, our work background. Now, there's a scriptural counterpart to what Will had to say, and it comes in Proverbs 10:19. When words are many, sin is not absent, but he who holds his tongue is wise. Now, I want to jump right on another proverb, which I think helps us a great deal in this arena as well. It's over in Proverbs 15:22, and it reads, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. And tonight, we want to be advisors for each other. We want to help each other out. Now, as I warned you in our last session, tonight is all about reviewing our resumes. We all came in here with an expectation with both a written resume and an oral resume, the 2-page written resume, which we talked about in the last session, the 2-minute oral resume, or what I refer to as the 2-minute drill. Both of those resumes have some commonalities and they have some uncommonalities. We discussed those last week. And tonight what we want everybody to have the opportunity to do is to share their written resume, share their oral resume, and get some feedback about how to make it better. How much better could Laura do if somebody could have ridden up that entire elevator ride with her who was taking notes during that ride and could provide her a great deal of feedback about how she could deliver that far more effectively while having Gary trapped in the elevator with. I mean, he was so exasperated by the end of the ride. You'll notice, and the script's called, I mean, we said when you're done, you get out and Laura goes one way and then you turn and go the other. Gary was so exasperated with that ride, he didn't even get out of the elevator. He just let her go out and he let the doors close back in front of him. He had heard and had enough. He really got into his role playing. Well, we're going to do two different kinds of critique tonight. The first one's going to be our oral resume. And first I want to draw your attention, have everybody get to the right place, because we're going to demonstrate an oral resume here in just a second, our 2-minute drill. We're going to have Fred and Ken come out and join me in just a second. But I want you to turn to handout 6.1 in your manuals. Handout 6.1 will be just a page or two to the right past the discussion questions in your manual. And at the top of the form, it'll say 2-minute drill critique. And when you get there, stop there, because that's where you're going to need to remain for a few moments. I'm going to ask for you to very lightly in pencil or make mental notes, because you're going to be using this form more than once this evening. And so on these first couple of ones, I just want you to make mental notes rather than writing on there, because we're going to be sharing some stuff up here in front of the room and in front of the cameras. And then you're going to have an opportunity to critique some other 2-minute drills following that. So I'm going to have Ken and Fred come out. Come on out, guys. And we're going to actually go through a demonstration of what I'm going to ask each of you to do here in a few minutes. So this is Fred Gehring to my left, your right, and Ken Vale, both volunteers, leaders with this ministry, both graduates, both having developed their own 2-minute drills during their job search, and both having completed a successful job search. And we flipped a coin, and we didn't tell Fred that he lost until just a few minutes ago. So Fred's going to go first. So I'm going to let Ken ask what we know is the most frequent interview question in the world. As a matter of fact, it may be the most frequent interview question in the galaxy, which is, tell me about yourself. It happens in almost every interview, and while it's many times it's those same words, if it's not those, it's usually a close variation on that. The interviewer sort of gives you a blank canvas on which you can paint for a few minutes and sort of give them a 35,000 foot level view of your entire career. And you have about 2 minutes or less to sort of paint that picture. So if you look at this critique form, we're going to be evaluating the content of the 2-minute drill. Then we're going to be evaluating the job seeker and how well they present that in terms of their delivery of this 2-minute oral rendition. And then, of course, the last piece, which is very, very important to the drill, we want to make sure that all of us, when we give our drill, we end it with a good open-ended question. So you make mental notes on that. Ken and I are going to be providing some critique for Fred. And so, Ken, it's all yours.
Well, Fred, thank you for coming in today. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Why don't you go ahead and tell me a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'd be pleased to, Ken. I grew up in Minnesota. I was part of a large family. I learned pretty early on if you wanted something, you had to work for it. And so I worked my way through the University of Minnesota and graduated with a degree, Bachelor of Science in Business Administration. After I got out of college, I started in the retail business, opening stores across the country, various cities. Pretty soon after running stores successfully, I was starting to supervise stores, and first as a district manager, then later on as a regional manager. For the last 12, 13 years, I've been president of 3 retail companies, part of the same parent company that I grew up with. At first, I was working for Tandy Leather Company, and then I came down to Fort Worth and I took over Cargo Furniture, which is a children's furniture company. Also had Save On Office Supply, which is another division of our corporation, handling office supplies. And then finally, I ended that career working as president of Tandy Leather Company. In each store and region, I displayed the ability to pretty much work unsupervised and to achieve success, growing people and profits, and usually in a turnaround situation. At Cargo, the first company that I had once I came to Fort Worth, we were losing about $3.5 million, and we turned that into $1 million annual profit in a period of about 3 years. At Save On Office Supply, it was losing about $2 million, and we turned that into $2.5 million profit and doubled the number of stores. So those were good achievements and the kind of work that I like to do. At this point, I'm kind of focused on a new opportunity. And so I'm looking to, for a position as Chief Operating Officer or Chief Executive Officer of a specialty retail company that's suffering some problems and needs some help. And so that's why I'm here to visit with you. Could you tell me some of the key issues that you're dealing with as a company?
Thank you, Fred.
Okay, let's, if we could, Ken, let's give Fred some feedback. Let's start right in on this. We'll see if we can provide this feedback in 3-4 minutes. Your 2-minute drill content, it was a little bit longer than 2 minutes. According to my timer, you went about 2:19. Which is, and I've heard you deliver this before, and I've seen you come spot on with 2 minutes. So a little bit long, and I think you got a little bit lost somewhere in the middle. Did you see any of that?
Yeah, I thought perhaps it was a situation where maybe, usually we go chronologically, you know, from one point to this job, and this job, and then you started giving the examples, which were fantastic. I like, you know, we saved $1 million here, we did $2 million here.
Can we stop for a second? Can we start right back at that point? Just start back right at that point.
Okay.
You want Ken to start where his mic was not on?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Mark time code.
Just go ahead.
Go.
All right. The thing that I was a little bit confused about is it seemed like instead of going chronologically at this first job at Tandy and you gave the examples, it was, I couldn't follow at which point it was you saved $1 million here and you gained $2 million on this one and that type of thing. I was kind of lost in a circle, I guess, if you will, where that came from.
Yeah, I mean, the examples were good. The results were great. I mean, you've got such a wonderful background to share in terms of the accomplishments, and I was so glad that you shared the example. I mean, when you start talking about multi-million-dollar impacts, those usually get people's attention and kind of perks up the ears. I think if you share the results while you're talking about the responsibilities, in job one, you accomplished this. Because of this, you got promoted to this job. Another accomplishment in that job, you got promoted to this job. It was kind of like you walked through the sequence of jobs, and then you started sharing the results that you were achieving. And it just a little bit disjointed, I think. Did you hear any other expressions of the gifts that he shared? What do you consider your greatest gift?
Turnaround situations.
Okay, so you talked about that in terms of the financial turnaround. Any other, I've seen your background, any other turnaround activities that you might have, results that you might have put in there in terms of personnel activities, cost activities, that kind of thing?
Yes, I probably could have added something to do with the reduction of turnover, which is a critical issue in the retail business. And we dramatically reduced turnover. One time I interviewed with a company and they were real proud that they only had 43% turnover in their management staff.
Yeah. I want to give you another.
That seemed high to me.
Give you another positive feedback too. You covered all 4 areas of the
Yes.
of the 2-minute drill. You gave the pre-career introduction to your growing up and kind of where you started. You went through the early, recent, and then I thought you did a great job of talking about what your job target is. And of course, that's where you want to end the 2-minute drill. Other comments that you might have on that?
In the overall, I think you hit that last section. I know we want to go in 4 segments, each phase of your career. You hit that about 1:50, if I was looking at that correctly. So maybe we want to get to that a little bit sooner in the 2-minute drill, and that way we can focus on what you're really looking for.
Yeah. In terms of the way, let's go to section 2, Fred's presentation style. You're always friendly, you're always smiling, you're always engaging, and you always seem very confident. I mean, I don't. You're clear in your language. In terms of the style in which you present this, I don't find anything that I could offer any suggestions. I mean, you could give me $10 while you're talking, but I mean, I don't know that that's going to.
Perhaps more practice.
Well, yeah, I know you haven't had to deliver this drill for quite a while, and I think it's the regular practice and repetition that helps in the flow of things. But I mean, your style is very good. Very comfortable. You appear comfortable, you appear relaxed, and you appear in command of what it is you want to say. And I know every time you do this, you do it a little bit differently. You usually include all the same components, but they vary, and it doesn't need to be so mechanical so it comes out the same every time you say it either. Good end to it. The 2-minute, the open-ended question at the end of that.
Yes, asking for the problems and how you can help to solve that problem.
When you can ask a good open-ended question that causes the person who's asked you the first question, tell me about yourself. When you ask a good penetrating open-ended question, it does several things. One, it sort of puts them on alert subconsciously. This is going to be a back and forth and not a one-way interrogation. Number 2, it lets them know that you're interested. You have enough interest and you're comfortable in your conversation enough to ask your question as well. But number 3, it enables you to begin to gather information right at the beginning that can help you, just because of the kind of question you ask. Their answer could give you information which could help you in your next the next questions that they ask and the answers that you have to provide for those. Well, let's turn tables here, and I'm going to let you put Ken on the spot here for a minute. And so, Ken, I'm going to let Fred ask you the question, and we'll let you fire away on your drill. I'm so glad I don't have to do this.
Hi, Ken. I'm Fred Gehring.
Hi, Fred. Very good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Why don't you tell me about your background?
Certainly. I'd love to. Fred, I was born in Northern Illinois and raised by blue-collar parents who taught me the value of hard work and doing things right the first time. I was educated at John Brown University in Northwest Arkansas and gained leadership skills there and was elected student government president. After graduating with a BS degree in broadcasting, I moved to Fort Worth, married the woman of my dreams, and decided to settle down in an insurance claims career. My formative training years were with Crawford & Company, Zurich American Insurance, and Petrosurance Casualty Company. And that training involved about 12 different jurisdictions of coverages. I then moved to ESIS Claim Service, where I became a team leader. And during that time, I oversaw 6 adjusters who managed claims for Fortune 1000 clients. We've retained about 95% of those clients through aggressive claim management services. Now, before that, I did have a time with Argonaut Insurance Company as a senior claim representative. While I was there, I also was promoted to insurance supervisor, but during that process, I also oversaw their flagship account, which is the University of Texas OSIP system, and we saved the state of Texas about $1 million through just one phase of that program. Well, after I decided to leave after 8 years, I then had the chance to be promoted to a claim manager, and so I left and went to AIM Benefit Services. That's a company here in Dallas. They had recently brought their claims in-house from a TPA. When I arrived there, the claims system was basically in shambles, and the staff was ready to leave, walk off the job. So we put a claim plan together. We closed about 25% of the claim files in 8 weeks. without adding to staff, and put some solid procedures in place for the department. At the end of 90 days, the president decided to take the operation in a different direction and eliminated my leadership role there. And that brings me to today. I'm a solid results-based claim professional that's looking for supervisory capacity where I can mentor and train and help adjusters to excel and become all that they can be, all while bringing the best financial outcome for their clients and have fun at the same time, because that always helps. I'm energized by continued learning and by solving complex claim issues. So let me ask you a question, Fred. What are the issues that you're facing in your claim operation that I may be able to help you with?
Thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah, it was a good comment. First time I've ever heard your drill, and it was a delight to learn some things about you I didn't know. I started the timer late, guessing that I started about a half minute late, which means you went about 2 minutes and 50 seconds. So you were a bit long. And where I, just in trying to follow the timer and follow the sections, where you got bogged down was in the early career. It was the longest part. It went, instead of being about 30 seconds, it was well over a minute, just in that early career stuff. Your pre-career was good, your recent career and your future career, they were all around a half a minute. So if you need more time in the early career, you got to prune a little bit of time out of each of those other sections. So I mean, that's my evaluation of the timing. How did the drill hit you?
Well, I was interested to learn that you were in broadcasting at one point, so that's interesting. I remember the first time I heard Ken's 2-minute drill was at a resume workshop. And I was riveted. It was also a little bit long. We always like to tell folks that it's better to be a little short on your 2-minute drill than a little bit long. But it was captivating. It was interesting the whole time. He did get hung up in the earlier career portion. So that's where I get hung up too, is during that time frame. But you were positive the whole time. You maintained great eye contact, had a smile, a whole lot more than I did. When I was doing mine. So you had a smile on your face the whole time. It was very interesting. So if it's got to be long as it's interesting, you tend to forget about the time.
Good point. That's a good point. Energetic, enthusiastic. Let me ask you this. I didn't ask this question of Fred. Do you have any critique for yourself after having just walked through that?
Well, I know what I did in the middle of it. I got 2 sections turned around. That's why I backtracked. Because I'm thinking in my mind, you're going chronologically. I went from this job to this job and this job, and I got 2 of them flipped around. And so I went back. I thought, well, if I skip it, that means I'm going to be way off track, and it's not going to make sense. So in my mind, while I'm doing it, I'm trying to figure out how I can dig myself out of a hole.
Well, I had the same problem. That comes from a lack of practice.
Right. Right.
Neither of us have been practicing this drill, so I got hung up and misstated the order in which I wanted to say things, but I hadn't practiced in a while. And you ought to be able to dance on your feet through your 2-minute drill.
What's your recommendation? I know you coach a lot of people on this as well, Fred. What's your recommendation in terms of practice frequency when you're a job seeker?
Oh, mercy. At first, you've got to practice a lot. I start them out by having them script out what they're going to say. Take the script, a full written script, practice that to the point where you can boil it down to just bullet points. And then after a while, you don't need the bullet points, because I like to tell people that if it's interesting, somebody's going to interrupt you. And if you've got it memorized, you're going to have to start at the beginning. Right. So you want it to be conversational in nature, and yours is very conversational. But that's how I coach people on it. First script it, then break it to bullet points, and then just have it be a conversation.
Yeah, and then when you get to the point where you pretty much know the flow, you write the 4 key words for each section on the back of your hand or on your cuff.
With a magic marker.
Okay, good job. All right, well, what we're going to do now is we're going to stop the cameras. And we're going to ask each of you guys in the audience, we're going to ask you to break into groups of 3. You've got your critique sheets with you. I'm going to ask you to, and I want you to stay relatively close, but you're going to need to spread out a little bit in groups of 3. And I'm going to ask you to do essentially what we've done here 3 times. One of you plays the role of asking the question. One of you plays the role of filling in some notes in the critique form, and the third one gives their 2-minute drill. Somebody in the group needs to have some kind of a clock or timer to start, stopwatch. If you've got a smartphone, of course, that will help because you can keep track of it that way. I want to offer one more little suggestion, and I don't know why I didn't think of this perhaps months or years earlier. And that is, if you have a smartphone and you'd like to have your 2-minute drill filmed, have one of the 2 people in your group turn on their camera, their video camera, and video your 2-minute drill. It is a great way. It's one thing to get feedback about how you do, but if you can hear it and see it, it's worth $1 million.
Can you post it on YouTube?
No, you don't post it on YouTube. No.
You know, another thing, David, I was told when I was in broadcasting is to practice it in front of a mirror if you're at home. And that way you can see if you're smiling, because you can hear a smile. You can hear a smile.
Absolutely. That's right. Yeah. So again, I'm going to give you the go-ahead to start and give you a few instructions before we get started. But I'm going to ask you right now to sort of pick up where you are, find 2 people, and in this front section, the section where you are, and in this front section, I want you to get into groups of 3 as quickly and as quietly as possible. Okay, the next section of our work tonight deals with doing some critique of our 2-page resumes. I refer to them as 2-page resumes. Some of you have 1 page, that's even better. Some of you have 3-page resumes. That can be a little bit tedious, a little bit long. I always like to, and I hate the dogma that says you have to be under 2 pages or you have to have a 1 page. What you really need to remember is this. Your resume needs to be as brief as you can make it and still get you an interview. You don't want it to be so long that you talk yourself into and out of the job without ever getting the interview. The idea is to whet their appetite with your resume. It's a sales brochure. It's not a tool to get the job. So that's just a quick review from our session last week. I refer to it as the 2-page resume. The only jobs that I think require more than 2 pages and not because you have a 30-year work history, that's irrelevant to the length of your resume. But if you have a very technical job, a very technical career, you're in a scientific position or a highly technical field in IT where you've got to use a lot of this technical jargon and a lot of this technical language, that and the certifications that come with that and the credentials that come with that, then you might end up with a little bit longer resume. But that's the only of all the thousands of recruiters and hiring managers that I've spoken with over the years, that's really the only justifiable reason, in my view, to have a resume that goes beyond 2 pages. The average resume is screened in 6 to 15 seconds. So if you create a resume that's too long, you're just giving them a lot of words that are frustrating them. They can't get to them. They're not going to take the time to read them. And instead of reading the words that you want them to see, they're basically going to set it aside and not see anything that you want them to see. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through a resume critique here as a sample. And in your books, I want you to go back to last week's lesson. This is the lesson on resumes, and I want you to find handout 5.5, handout 5.5, and pull that out of your manuals, because then we're going to have to flip back over to our resume critique form, which is, the resume critique form is handout 6.2. So you need both of those forms simultaneously in your purview and in your view there, because we're going to walk through. This is a resume. This is a real resume. We've changed the name, the address, the phone numbers to protect the innocent. But this is a real resume with real results. There's some really good stuff on this resume and some things that need to be improved upon. And if I didn't say this in the last session, I think it's important that I point this out. Now, all the people that have this manual that aren't listening to this presentation may be a little misinformed about the resume samples that we have in this manual. You see, all of these are teaching resumes. There are some people that have bought this manual, this job seeker manual. They think they have some great resume samples in here so they don't come back to tonight's session. And every one of these resumes has got serious mistakes on them. So you don't want to set your resumes up like the way these look. We're going to point out the good things that are on them and the not so good things, and we did some of that last week, and we're going to do the same tonight with Fran Executive's resume. So if you've got Fran Executive's resume, handout 5.5, and pull out your critique form, and Ken and Fred, I've got critique forms here for you to use. We're just going to work through all the sections of this critique form as we do this. The very first part of a resume review has absolutely nothing to do with the words on the resume, at least not directly. The first part of this, the first section here says, how's the overall look? We're actually looking for it's inviting us to read it. Does it look like it's professional? Does it have a nice clean layout? Is there lots of nice white space? Is it in a font size that's even going to allow me to read it? Before I even read the words, I sort of give the overall look of you, and as I look at Fran Executive's resume, and I'll defer now to Fred and Ken for a second, as you look at this points on the feedback form, the margins, the white space, the font size, the flow, the sequence, the length, and so forth, its overall professional appearance, without picking on any of the content yet, what are some of your comments? Go ahead.
I'd say overall, it is a two-page resume. It flows pretty well. There is good white space around the outside edges. There are a few things we could talk about: indentation and some of the alignment of the columns, and like the phone numbers up at the very top are not in alignment. Those types of things, but. Overall, there's plenty of white space because you don't want it to be too jumbled. I could say there's a couple of spots where there could be some spaces in between the different sections, like under achievements. There's 3 bullet points there, but they're kind of crammed in together, so that could be construed to be a little bit confusing or tight in that respect. Fred?
Okay, Fred?
Yeah, I saw some of the same things, not lining up to the outer margins. The margins are certainly plenty adequate. That white space is good. I always like to have people remove achievements. The word takes a couple lines to have that in there. That would allow me more space for the white space between each of the achievements, which would be kind of nice. I also noticed that just at a glance, this is a content item, but they need month and year instead of just the year. And that's from recruiters have consistently noted that.
Right.
On the second page, it's pretty easy to see at the top. Properly, Fran put her name at the top, but she wasn't careful about her margins. And page 2, the number 2 dropped to the second line.
Yeah, you don't often see that when you first look at it, but it just looks like an inexperienced person put that together when you see that page and then the number 2 wrap to the next line. There's just one extra space in there that if you take that space out, 2 will go back where it belongs.
Right. Also, I would note that there's an italicized statement under each company talking about the nature of that company.
Yeah, that's referred to as a company byline.
Okay. You need to be consistent when you do that. The Grand Art and Frame needed to have a one-liner on that particular company as well, so that you've got it on each of the companies. As long as you've got it on all the others, you might as well have it on that one as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. As you look, is there any other overall things in terms of the readability of it? I think the font's a good size. It looks like it's either an 11 or a 12 in a nice serif font. It's easy to read. In my aged eyes, I don't struggle trying to read any of it. Any other things about the overall layout before we get to the style and design stuff, where we start to get a little, and Fred's sort of already inched into that. Is the style and design of this appropriate for somebody who wants to be an executive?
I think so.
Okay, all right, I would agree with that. When you just look at this, again, without reading any words, you kind of see the sections of it, you see how it's so is it inviting to read? Is it something you're saying, well, yeah, this is the kind of stuff that I want to see if I'm looking for a specialty retail executive at the CEO, COO, president level, does this look like somebody's resume would be compelling enough for me to want to at least take a glance at some of the words and read it?
I think so, and I think it is fairly impactful the way it's written. I know this is nitpicking, but to go back to nitpicking a little bit, since we are leaving a space after experience before we get into that section,
right?
I would, for consistency, leave an empty line after education and after association as well.
I would agree. You've got to be consistent in your stylistic stuff.
Yeah.
It's imperative. Again, this is about being looking like an executive versus looking like a non-executive. Okay.
Under the company name itself, I tend not to want to jam up the name of the company, the city, and additional information about it too much. I'd like some space in there to provide some separation.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know that, and again, we'd have to ask a Fran executive this. Sometimes we have a tendency to want to put too much information. The fact that, let's look at that first employer, Grand Art and Frame in Commerce, California, division of Goody Crafts, Inc. I guess my question would be, is it important for us to know that this company is in commerce? And the answer to Fran would be, is it or not? If it's not, take it off. Is it important for the readers of this resume to know that Grand Art and Frame is a division of Goody Crafts? And if that's an irrelevant piece of information, even though it's true, take it off. If the reader isn't going to care about it, let the reader then focus their time and what few seconds they have on the stuff that you want them to read, which I think would be the 3 bullets underneath where they talk about some significant activity.
I would
Thoughts?
tend to agree with that. In addition, you'll notice that division of Goody Crafts, Inc., period, is more detail than you need. Probably adequate to say division of Goody Crafts.
Yeah.
Just as you did verbally.
Yeah, again, not to sound overly nitpicky, but this is, when you go through your resume and you're fine-tuning your resume, you want to eliminate every letter that you can eliminate, every letter, every character that is not needed. Get rid of it. This is conserving ink. This is not about the length of the resume in terms of paper. It's about removing as much ink from this as you can without destroying what you're trying to communicate. And so I would agree. Ink could easily come off of that.
One thing you mentioned previously is when I first look at this, the bolded items are what draws my eye on here. And so it appears to me like Fran mentioned, the most important thing was consultant, special projects, president and CEO, and on the back page, president and CEO. So to me, that means Fran wanted that to be highlighted because it's bolded. Yep. And so isn't that what you want to do, is highlight?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would really support the layout in that sense. There are some job seekers that I advise against. They'll take their company name, Grand Art and Frame, or write on office supplies, and they'll bold that. Then they'll bold the dates. Then they'll bold the title. That's too much bolding. The eye gets confused about where it ought to spend time. I think you have to ask yourself the question when you're trying to highlight things on here, what do we want highlighted on this resume? Well, nothing wrong at all that Fran highlighted, Fran Executive, the name. That's the product. That's the Lexus. That's the Coca-Cola. That's the Frito-Lay. You want nothing wrong at all that these category areas, especially retail executive, is bolded. That's the job target for Fran. We want every reader to be able to know that the product is Fran Executive and the job target they have, especially if they didn't read anything else on this 2 pages, they need to read those 2 things, the product and what the job they're aiming at. And then to see if they're especially retail executive, I would think you would want the reader to know that you had experience being a retail executive. And so to bold those job titles makes far more sense than bolding the employer name. I'll even go further down on the bottom of the 2nd page. The education, some people will bold the name of the college or the university, and I always ask the question, the readers of this, for the job that you're applying for, are they going to be more interested in the degree that you have or where you got it? And quite frankly, all the surveying I've done, it's about 8 to 2. About 80% of the people say, for the job I'm looking for, they're far more concerned about my degree than where I happen to go to school to get it. And so that's what you would bold in that case. So, yeah, one of the other big positives about this resume is there's very little bolded. I love the fact that if you had 6 seconds, you read Fran executive, they're a specialty retail executive target. They've got a couple of quick achievements. They were a consultant, a president and CEO, a president and CEO, a president and CEO, a president, bachelor of degree in business administration. Bring them in for an interview. I'm done. Might not even read all the regular type words on that resume. Other things that you might suggest as we get into some of the nitpicky stuff here, I want to mention two. Fred, you already mentioned this, the alignment of the phone numbers, or maybe Ken said this, and the dates. The dates are not right justified. Again, they just look like they were sort of spaced out there. If you line them all up, especially the dates on the second page, they are all not aligned properly, and it looks second class. Another nitpick about this is, excuse me, I don't like these little square bullet points. Again, it's cutesy in design, perhaps, but just plain old regular bullet points that do the trick. You don't need to get fancy or cutesy about this unless you're an art student applying for a design and arts job. This is about making this nice, straightforward, conservative when you're applying for a conservative kind of position like this. And now I want to go back to the positive thing. I love the fact that there are so many results and achievements on here. The 3 big achievements up front, and then if you look under each of these, Fran has not spent a lot of time giving us information about what her responsibilities were, or his responsibility. I don't know whether this Fran is a man or a woman, but we don't know a lot about the responsibilities, but we know an awful lot about the accomplishments. And that's what employers want to see. They don't want to know what size budget you had. They want to know what you did with it. They don't want to know how many subordinates you had. They want to know how well you managed and provided leadership. They don't want to know how many stores you managed. They want to know how many of them were profitable and how profitable were they. That's what it really gets down to. So I think for the most part, I'd give this a solid B plus as a resume. A few little tweaks, a few little layout things that need to be fixed up. Final comments, Ken, from you, and then from Fred.
I like the way that it flows all together, and there are plenty of numbers, because those to me are the things that really catch your eye, especially if you're in business and you're looking at percentages, dollars, and that type of thing. It's an objective thing that you can put down on the resume that catches your attention and lets them know, I didn't just make this up, I really did this.
Yeah. Fred?
Well, it's really important. It's not so much what you did, it's how well you did it. So this is a good illustration of that they're giving things that would be meaningful to a future employer.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be, I guess, to kind of finish this out, you don't have to put every accomplishment you've made, every result you've come up with. You don't have to tell them every little T that you crossed and I that you dotted. This is really about giving some samples of what you've done, giving them a few illustrations of your capabilities, and you want to give them just enough so that they want to invite you in. So that there's 2 questions that come out of this. How much of this could they duplicate in my company? And even if they can't duplicate it here, the question I'm just dying to ask is, how did you do that?
Yeah, exactly.
And so if I were looking for an executive, even if I didn't have an opening, I'd give this person an interview, and I might create a job for them if they were as good face-to-face as they look on paper.
I'll get Fran on the phone right
okay,
now.
let's call Fran up right away. Okay, good job, guys. Thank you for your help and your feedback. All right, using your 2-page resume critique form, what we want to do again now for all of those that are listening and watching, we want you to break up into your little 3-person groups. They can be the same groups as you had or others. Hopefully, most all of you have a resume. It's either written on a piece of 8.5 by 11 paper, or it's on a napkin, or it's on a doily or something. And what I want you to do is, I'm going to give you each about 7 minutes to critique each resume. So you're going to get a total of 21 minutes total, tops. If you finish early, that's great, because we've got one more little section to do after we finish this, and I'm going to start your 21 minutes right now. So that includes you getting your dispersed as your group, and we're going to start 21 minutes. Review your resumes, as we've talked about here. Give some honest, loving, nitpicky feedback so we can get better at doing this, and we'll reconvene in 21 minutes. Thank you. Well, I hope you learned something by going through both the 2-minute drill and the 2-page resume critique. I hope you all walk out of this session a little bit richer for the experience, of feeling a little bit more capable, a little bit more knowledgeable about what needs to be in it, in the 2-minute drill, what needs to be on the resume, and perhaps some things that you can discard or take out. I'd like to spend the last few minutes that we have in this session to talk about some of the other communication stuff, the other written communication that goes on in a job search. And I always like to start this little piece with something I read recently. 2 trucks loaded with 1,000 copies of Roget's Thesaurus collided as they left a New York publishing house last Thursday, according to the Associated Press. It goes on to say, witnesses were stunned, startled, aghast, taken aback, stupefied, amazed, astounded, and unsettled. Now, if that doesn't ring for you, then it says to me that perhaps we need to be thinking about getting a thesaurus. If for some reason you feel a little bit inadequate about your communication, the thesaurus is something that's handy to keep close by. I keep one right by my computer, and also keep one over in my easy chair where I do a lot of my reading. I like to be able to find synonyms for things, alternative words for things, whether I'm sitting in my easy chair, I'm writing something, maybe I'm preparing one of my radio programs, or I'm doing some other written task. I like to be able to broaden my vocabulary, and it helps us a lot when we're trying to communicate in resumes, we're trying to send out networking letters, we're trying to put together cover letters and the like. And we're going to talk about that this evening. There's also the advantage now, if you do a lot of work on your computer, there's the electronic. You've got the online thesaurus, where you can go out and find substitute words, so you don't have to use the same word in 4 consecutive sentences if you're talking about something that's very, very specific. There's a couple of handouts in your manuals that I don't want you to turn to, but I want you to know they're there. One of the handouts is a 4-page handout of action verbs. And action verbs are very, very important, both in your cover letter as well as your resume. We want to use action words. They have more power when we're communicating, and I've given you a whole set of them. They're in here alphabetically. And the first time I had a tool like this, I just went through it with a highlighter, and I started highlighting words that I knew I would want to use somewhere. And I don't remember how many dozens I ended up highlighting, but there's several hundred on this list, and find some words that maybe they're not a regular part of your communication, but they could be if you had a reference like this that you could go back and hone in on. I also want to draw your attention over to 6.5. I would like you to turn there. This is handout 6.5. This is a sample cover letter that's in our manual. And I just want to point out a couple of things about this cover letter. 6.5. Cover letter 6.5 is for the fictitious name Susan Academia, who's got a Grapevine, Texas address, And she has written this cover letter to a Ms. Michelle Jones, who's the superintendent of schools in the local school district there. And these paragraphs that are in this cover letter are extremely well constructed. What Susan has done in this cover letter is she's taken the first paragraph to kind of introduce who she is and the fact that she's including her resume for review for a position in this school district. In this case, she is applying for as a candidate for the assistant principal position. She then goes on in the next couple of paragraphs. She's discovered in her research a couple of things that are very, very important to this school district. And so she's basically taken this approach: you need this, and this is how I can fill your need. A good cover letter is going to address the organization. Remember what I said a few weeks ago, this job search is not about you. It's about the organizations that you're talking to. So your cover letter is not about you. It's about the organizations that you're applying for. You want to talk about their needs and how you can fill their needs, not how they can fill your needs. When the central theme of the cover letter is you lose their interest very quickly. When the central theme of the cover letter is the organization, you capture their attention in almost every instance, especially when you show them in the way you construct the letter that you've actually discovered what some of their major needs are in the organization and how you can help them meet those needs. I mean, we have to face it, this whole English language thing is a very crazy thing. I read recently, to show you how crazy the English language is, there's no egg and eggplant or ham and hamburger. Neither are there apples in pineapples or pines in pineapples. English muffins weren't invented in England, and French fries didn't come from France. Sweetmeats are candies, while sweet breads, which aren't sweet, are meat. I mean, our language just gets more confusing and more convoluted as we take English for granted, I think, in this country, because we just sort of throw words around and hope that somebody gets at what it is we're trying to say. If the plural of tooth is teeth, why isn't the plural of booth beef? Someone might ask. If one is a goose, then two ought to be two gooses. No, it's two geese. So if you've got one moose, then why don't you have two meese? Again, English just kind of begs the question. We need to get better at, as we're thinking about communicating, particularly with strangers, the choice of the words we use and the way in which we use them. I'll share with you a little story, and I think this is vitally important. As you got up this morning, this is, you'll see who wrote this in a second. This is a story from someone to you. As you got up this morning, I watched you and hoped you would talk with me, even if it was just a few words, asking my opinion or thanking me for something good that happened in your life today, but I noticed you were too busy. You were trying to find the right outfit to wear. When you ran around the house getting ready, I knew that there'd be a few minutes for you to stop and say hello. At one point, I waited 15 minutes for you to talk about when you had nothing to do. You were just sitting there quietly in a chair. Then I saw you spring to your feet. I thought you wanted to talk to me, but you ran to the phone and called a friend to get the latest gossip instead. I watched patiently all day long with your activities, as busy as they were. You didn't say anything to me. I noticed that before lunch, you looked around. Maybe you felt embarrassed to talk to me. That's why you didn't bow your head. You glanced 3 or 4 tables over and you noticed some of your friends talking to me before they ate, but you didn't. That's okay. There's still more time left today. You went home. It seemed as if you had lots of things to do. After a few more of them were done, you turned on the TV. I don't know if you like TV or not. Just about anything goes there, and you spend a lot of time each day in front of it, not thinking about anything, just enjoying the show. I waited patiently again as you watched TV and ate your meal, but again, you didn't talk to me. Bedtime, I guess you felt too tired. After you said goodnight to your family, you plopped yourself into bed and fell asleep in no time. That's okay, because you may not realize that I'm always there for you. I've got patience, more than you'll ever know. I even want to teach you how to be patient with others as well. I love you so much, I wait every day for a nod, a prayer, a thought, or a thankful part of your heart. It's hard to have a one-sided conversation. Well, you're getting up once again. Once again, I'll wait with nothing but love for you, hoping that today you'll give me some of your time. I love you. Signed, God. You see, this is all about all levels of communication, and I want to get right into one little final piece, and then we'll call this session over for today. I'd like you, if you would, to turn to handout. I'll find it in a second. Handout, I think it's 6.2. No, it's not 6.2. I got to find it now. Too many pieces of paper. Here we go. 6.4. I want to work through this, and I want to talk about some things that you might consider doing, very important things. I'm going to go through this real fast, so if you can listen as fast as I could talk, we'll be in good shape here. Items to consider, the first section on this is about powerful written communications. I want to have you consider as job seekers to get personalized stationery or to make your own if you have the capabilities to do that. Make sure that you get some feedback from people that it looks professional. You don't want this to look like second grader work. This needs to really look professional. I also want to encourage you to get some personalized note cards and note paper. You've probably seen some people that you've worked with in the past have these little half-page sheets that said from the desk of Fred Jones, from the desk of Sally Smith. Those are nice little things to have when you want to write out a little quick little handwritten note, little handwritten thank you note. Those work great for thank yous with people with whom you're meeting, networking connections, and that kind of thing. If I can stress anything out of this first section in this, I want to encourage every job seeker from the moment they find themselves being a job seeker to get business cards. You know, business cards were invented as personal calling cards long before they were used in businesses. People had personal calling cards centuries ago, and when they called on someone's home, they always brought a calling card and they left it there, indicating that they had come by, and you need to know that I left my calling card. It was just part of etiquette of the time. Now when you're meeting with people in networking meetings, when you're meeting each other in a group like this and you're in job search, you need to be able to give somebody your contact information, because after they've connected with you and found out about your job search needs and your job target, if they learn of something the next day or 3 days later, they're much more likely going to make a phone call if you've given them a phone card, a business card, than if you've had them write down your name and number on a piece of scratch paper, or you've torn the corner off of a sheet of paper to give them your contact information, which some of the time they can't read anyway. Just much more professional. Now, you can get free business cards right off of the Career Solutions website. We get our business cards through Vistaprint.com. We're a registered associate of Vistaprint, and let me tell you how that works. You can go to Vistaprint directly and order your free business cards. If you'll go through our website and then click on the link at careersolutionsworkshop.org, click on the link on the homepage that says free business cards, they make a donation to Career Solutions as a ministry. Costs you the same. The cards are free. You pay the same for shipping, whether you order them direct or not. I think the shipping fee is $5 or $6 or $7. I don't remember now what it is, and it will change over time. But the point is, you can go in and you can pick out about one of about 30 or 35 different card designs. You fill in the template with the information you want on it. Make sure you get your name on there, your contact information, your email address, your LinkedIn profile address if you have one. Make sure you put your job target on there, just as if you were doing the job. I'm a chief financial officer. I'm an elementary school teacher. I'm a firefighter, emergency technician. Whatever your job target is, get it on your card. You order those, they get delivered to you in about a week or so, and you've got 250 free business cards. And here's the neat thing. You can go back in and reorder free business cards as many times as you want to. They don't care. They'd like you to try different styles and different designs. Sure, they hope that someday you'll buy 2,000 or 3,000 cards at a nice hefty fee, but right now they're happy to have customers ordering free business cards, and they're the biggest business card printer in the world. You can do the same thing with ordering free business or ordering business envelopes, catalog envelopes. Let me go down to cover letters. We already talked about cover letters, but let me just give you some kind of rules of thumb here. Remember, this is about getting the reader to read your resume and to schedule you for an interview. So it needs to be brief, always less than a page, and considerably less if you can say it in as succinct words. Use powerful action verbs off of some of those handout pages that I referred to you earlier. Make sure that you use the information that you discover in your research about the company or key people or what's going on in the marketplace, the competitiveness of the organization, the mission statement, and so forth. They need to know in reading your cover letter that you know enough about their organization to know that you are a fit for them. They want to know that you've learned something about their organization. The worst thing you can ever do is show up in an interview and say, I don't really know what you do, but I know you've got a job opening that I'd like to fill. Those two sentences don't even go well together. Make sure that in your cover letters that you combine their needs with your capabilities. And cover letters, by the way, are very formal pieces of communication. You don't abbreviate anything. It needs to be very formal in its approach. As I said, you keep it to one page, very businesslike and professional. Thank you letters. I want to summarize thank you letters by saying it this way. Anybody who gives you any of their time for a networking meeting, an interview, you go out and interview with a company. I was talking with somebody in the break for this session who had an interview today. Interview with 3 people. Interviewed the potential boss, that boss's boss, and that boss's boss. 3 levels of management today in one visit to the firm. My first question was, what time did the interview end? Oh, about 3:30. Okay, that gave you enough time. Did you send out 3 thank you letters today? Not one with 3 names, 3 separate thank you letters, all written differently, all personally addressed to the individual people that you spoke to. Number 1, it's good etiquette. Number 2, it's great business. It just makes sense. I know employers that have made their final selection when they got down to 2 or 3 finalists, they ended up giving the job to the person that sent the thank you letter. What does that take? 2 minutes of your time? A 42, 46, 48 cents, I don't even know what stamps cost now, but 1 postage stamp and a 49 or 59 cent thank you card. Could make the difference between starting to work now or starting to work 3 months from now. Thank you letters, very, very important. There's a lot to learn there about thank you letters. The most important thing in these 10 points is they need to be handwritten. Somebody says, well, I have terrible handwriting. Then practice. Well, I've been practicing for 40 years. I don't know how to write well. Then have somebody else handwrite it for you and you sign it. But make sure it's handwritten. It has 10 times the power of a typewritten thank you note. 10 times the power. How about a thank you email? Doesn't have the power. Thank you emails, they read them, delete them. I've seen thank you letters set on desks for weeks or months. When I retired after 26 years from my last corporate employer and got a chance to look at my entire file, because I happened to be an executive of the company when I finally retired, I looked at my entire file, 26 years of paper going in this file. Of course, now it's all electronic, but then it was all paper. The thank you note that I wrote to the hiring manager that hired me 26 years earlier was in that file. So it not only helped me land the first job I got there, but every promotion that I got thereafter. Thank you notes, powerful, powerful tools. And I don't know, you talk to any recruiter, how many thank you notes do you get? Very few, very few, very few. I don't know anybody that gets a lot of thank you notes. That's why they have so much power. Nobody else is doing it. And you'll stand out like a radiant, bright light. Some other thoughts there in terms of hints to powerful writing. I'll let you read through those. It's just important that we write well. Make sure you have somebody proofread it. Spell check is not your answer in today's world. It doesn't catch half the problems that we create when we're typing up correspondence like cover letters and resumes. Every time you change your resume, every time you customize it, have another set of eyes read it so that you proof it well. Okay, that's what we have about written communications. We talked tonight about the cover letters. We talked tonight about the written resumes. Next week, we're going to get into that, what I think is perhaps, arguably, one of the most important sessions in our curriculum. We're going to be talking about networking. We know that somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4 of all jobs that are landed as a result of networking. I hope I don't sound like I'm exaggerating this because I don't mean to. I guess what I really mean to be doing is sort of putting a real heavy stamp on this statement. So let me say it again. 2/3 to 3/4 of all jobs. Seldom do I use the word all. Seldom do I use absolutes in my language. But in this case, I mean all jobs. 2/3 to 3/4 of all jobs, CEO level jobs to entry level jobs, college grad jobs to blue collar jobs, part-time jobs, full-time jobs, jobs at the top of the pyramid, the bottom of the pyramid, jobs that require lots of credentials, jobs that require none. Jobs that pay great incomes, jobs that pay minimum wage, government jobs, private sector jobs. I'm using the word all jobs because I mean all jobs. 2/3 to 3/4 of all jobs that are landed as a result of networking. Which always then begs the question, and you're going to hear this from me next week, you're going to hear from me 2 weeks from now, you're going to hear from me 4 weeks from now, because I don't want you to go home without this thought. If 2/3 to 3/4 of all jobs are landed through networking, why would you spend 80% of your time on the computer looking for job postings? That doesn't even make sense to me. It's a rhetorical question. I hope you'll wrestle around in your noodle for a few minutes. Next week, we're going to be talking about why network. We're going to be talking about how to network. We're going to be talking about where and when to network and with whom to network. I don't expect to make you networking experts, but you're going to be so better armed after our next session than most job seekers that are walking around for the rest of their job search candidacy. Not only in this job, but the next job and the job after that. And by the way, this networking phenomenon in landing jobs is not new to this generation. The principles that I'm going to be sharing have been working for 100 or more years. This is not news. Successful job seekers have known this. Your parents, your successful parents knew this. Your successful grandparents knew this, and their parents knew it if they were out looking for work. Networking, a powerful, it's a life skill. It's something we need to all get better at because it's not something you just do when you're looking for work. It's something that you need to be effective at doing when you're in your job because number one, it can help you hold on to your job longer. Number two, it can help you get promoted better. Number three, it might be the difference between you're getting laid off or being in that group of people that doesn't get laid off next time your company has a reduction in force. This is a powerful, powerful tool. This isn't something that we just learn and use long enough to land our next job in the next 3 months. Okay, enough said. Let me pray and we'll go home. Father, thank you so much for all that you've done in our lives. Thank you for each of these that have come. We're just so grateful for the opportunity to be part of this ministry. Father, I just ask that you would bless everybody who's associated with Career Solutions, all of the behind-the-scenes people that are so seldom even noticed, that do so much to support what it is we're accomplishing in Career Solutions, the producer of our radio show, those that are doing the videotaping of this entire workshop series, for those individuals that are preparing all of our materials and scheduling all of the events that we have, those that are making phone calls for us in preparation for our job fairs and all the other activities that go on for Career Solutions, Father, I just ask that you would bless each and every one of them and the hearts that they bring to serve Career Solutions and in so doing to serve you and the mission that you've given us with this ministry. Be with us now as we go, Father. Help us to have a successful week. Keep us pointed in the right direction as you are that lamp unto our feet. We bless you, Father. We love you, praise you. We thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. See you next session.